least 49 people have been killed and dozens more wounded in New Zealand after a gunman opened fire on 2 mosques. Heavy flooding leaves entire villages in southern Malawi underwater. Thousands of people are displaced. And French aviation experts are analyzing the flight data recorders from the Ethiopian Airlines jet that crashed, killing all 157 on board. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with the senseless loss of life and shooting massacre in New Zealand. Police on the island nation, located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, say 3 men and 1 woman are in custody. But so far, only 1 man is being charged with murder after he allegedly opened fire on 2 mosques in Christchurch Friday, killing at least 49 people, including 3 Somali nationals. More than 20 others were seriously wounded. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says none of them were on security watch list. A photo taken off the internet shows the alleged suspect with weapons inside a vehicle. Television New Zealand has identified the shooter as 28-year-old Brenton Tarrant from Grafton, New South Wales, Australia. However, police did not immediately confirm the arrested person's name. Here's Police Commissioner Mike Bush.
So far, 1 person, a male in his late 20s, has been charged with murder and should appear in the Christchurch court tomorrow morning. 3 other people were apprehended. We believe one of those persons who was armed and was at the scene may have had nothing to do with this incident. And the 2 other people that have been apprehended, again in possession of firearms in the general environment, we are working through to understand what their involvement is.
Well, the police commissioner also said no agency in New Zealand or Australia, to his knowledge, had prior information about the people taken into custody. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the attacks were unlike anything they have ever experienced.
Many of those who will have been directly affected by this shooting may be migrants to New Zealand. They may even be refugees here. They have chosen to make New Zealand their home, and it is their home. They are us. The person who has perpetuated this violence against us is not. They have no place in New Zealand. There is no place in New Zealand for such acts of extreme and unprecedented violence.
Following the attacks, New Zealand's terror threat was raised from low to high. Police are urging the people to stay clear of mosques in New Zealand because it's not clear if everyone involved with the attack has been arrested. As shaken worshippers left one of the mosques, this man says he had a close encounter with a gunman.
And he passed. I say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And not talk me. He looking and not talk me. He is starting. He starting shooting, and the people of the changing the shoes and the shooting, and me, I'm running. Just after that, he go inside and he go one by one. Everybody killing, and some people died and some people injured.
With the attacks in New Zealand, a country of 4.5 million people, are unprecedented. The country prides itself on its social diversity. The Bangladesh cricket team was at the mosque when the shooting started, but were able to escape. The 3rd cricket test match has been cancelled. U.S. President Donald Trump has extended his condolences via Twitter to New Zealanders, saying, a quote, "The U.S. stands by New Zealand for anything we can do." Airplane manufacturer Boeing has announced that it is suspending deliveries of its 737 MAX jets to airlines after nearly every country grounded the plane following Sunday's deadly crash in Ethiopia. Boeing says it will keep building its newest flagship product, but it will put deliveries on hold until new software is installed, tests are carried out, and the investigation into the Ethiopian crash provides some answers. Meanwhile, a tail part found in the wreckage of the crashed Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 8 could indicate similarities with the crash 5 months ago in Indonesia. This according to Reuters sources. Julian Sather-Toit reports.
A possible clue found in the crash of the Boeing 737 MAX 8 in Ethiopia. Sources have told Reuters that investigators at the crash site near Addis Ababa have found a key part of the plane's tail. The horizontal stabilizer is reportedly set in an unusual position, similar to that seen in the wreckage of an Indonesian MAX 8 which crashed last year. The position of the stabilizer could help determine whether the plane was set nose down for a steep dive. All Boeing MAX jets now grounded worldwide because of similarities between the two crashes. Problems with the plane's software suspected in the Indonesian incident. Before the jets are allowed back in the air, Boeing and US regulators will have to agree a fix. But that is just the first step, says Reuters correspondent David Shepardson.
Then it has to be tested, approved, and then training procedures have to be rolled out, and it has to be actually implemented across the fleet. So at a minimum, just finalizing the software upgrade will take weeks. Lawmakers told us that it would not be on all planes until at least the end of April, potentially longer.
And that is only if the investigation doesn't turn up any more problems. Black boxes from the Ethiopian jet are now being analysed in France. Initial conclusions expected in a few days. In the meantime, Boeing will keep making its bestseller, but deliveries to airlines are suspended. Analysts estimate that could cost Boeing up to $2.5 billion a month in delayed payments. And that does not include any reimbursements to airlines for flight disruptions. Meanwhile, relatives of the dead stormed out of a meeting with Ethiopian Airlines on Thursday, decrying a lack of transparency, while others made the painful trip to the crash scene.
Well, Julian Satterthwaite of Reuters with that report. Well, a powerful tropical storm slammed Mozambique Thursday evening, battering the coast with heavy rain and winds at speeds of up to 170 kilometers an hour, injuring several people. In Beira, a city of 500,000 people and a gateway for imports to landlocked countries in Southeast Africa, television video showed billboards and rooftops being blown off, trees snapped and power cables sprawled across streets. Mozambican television channel TVM reports that at least 5 people have been seriously injured. Cyclone Idai dumped more water and brought destruction to areas where scores of people have already been killed and tens of thousands have been displaced by floods over the past week. In neighboring Malawi, at least 56 people have died and thousands more have been displaced in heavy flooding in the southern part of the country. The country now is also on alert for an approaching tropical cyclone. Sisipo Sikwayiya has the latest.
Enifa Miliasi is trying to salvage what she can from the debris of her destroyed home. She's one of more than 80,000 people displaced by floods in southern Malawi after storms which started earlier this month caused rivers to break their banks and left entire villages underwater.
Cracks appeared in the walls, and soon after the house came down. We all ran outside and watched as it fell. We were lucky to have got out with only minor injuries. Many other people were killed and some were badly injured. Many more have not been seen since the floods came. We hear crocodiles have eaten some people.
Malawian officials say at least 56 people have died so far and scores more are injured. Most of the displaced are now living in camps, but many are malnourished or need urgent medical attention, and officials are worried because there's a shortage of supplies. President Mutharika has already declared a state of emergency in the region. The country has also been put on alert for more rain and flooding. Tropical cyclone Idai is expected to make landfall through neighboring Mozambique later this week.
Well, that was Reuters' Sisipo Sikwayiya reporting. Now, the U.S. military has carried out 3 airstrikes against al-Shabaab militants in Somalia this week, continuing a rapid pace on target to double and possibly triple last year's record-setting strike numbers. Now, according to U.S. Africa Command, the latest strike killed 3 militants near Malawi in the lower Juba region on Wednesday. VOA Pentagon correspondent Calabab joins me live from the U.S. military headquarters outside of Washington in Arlington, Virginia. Hello, Calab.
Hi, good evening, Vincent. U.S. military officials are calling this latest strike a collective defense strike. They were protecting local Somali forces, even though there were no U.S. military personnel on the ground at the time. This does follow 2 other strikes this week in the lower Shabelle region, killing 10 militants. Now, U.S. military officials, U.S. military soldiers were actually on the ground during one of those attacks by al-Shabaab, during one of those strikes. Al-Shabaab actually claimed that they killed a U.S. soldier, but AFRICOM has denied that and said that all U.S. soldiers were accounted for and none were harmed. But if you look at this week, the pace is actually typical of the overall pace and the overall increase of airstrikes in Somalia, 27 so far this year. And that already is in front of a record-breaking pace last year with 47 strikes in Somalia, 35 the year before that, the first year of the Trump administration. Let me put this into perspective for you, Vincent. If you look at the number of strikes in Somalia total in just 2 years, a little over 2 years of the Trump administration, it triples the number of strikes in Somalia carried out under the Obama administration.
Now, Carla, why are we seeing this ramp up in the number of strikes?
Well, we're seeing this ramp up because, according to commanders, they're saying that there's success on the ground. I was speaking in Africa during a recent visit to the continent with Major General Marcus Hicks. He's the commander of U.S. Special Operations Forces in Africa, and he said that they've seen particular success in the south in Kismayu, which just a handful of years ago was the epicenter for al-Shabaab. Let's take a listen.
We've cleared about 45 kilometers up the lower Juba River Valley, established combat outposts that have withheld multiple attacks. And as we make, again, we as the Somalis and our Amazon partners make contact with al-Shabaab, the enemy is presenting itself in such a way that it can be struck as part of this broader counterinsurgency effort. And they are losing troops in the field at what I would suspect is an alarming rate to al-Shabaab. And that's really what you're seeing in this ramp up.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Carla, for that reporting. That's viewers.
But, Vincent, we can't forget.
We have to end it there, Carla. Thank you very much. And that's viewers.
Right, Vincent, I was just going to say we can't forget that this ramp up is still not preventing deadly strikes.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you once again, Carla. Well, now, the Africa Health Agenda International Conference 2019 concluded recently in Kigali, Rwanda. It sought to address barriers in access, quality, financing, and accountability by all sectors to ensure that every country in Africa can achieve health for all by 2030. Among the attendees was Faustin Wabwire, Senior Manager, Policy and Advocacy, Management Sciences for Health. She now joins me to tell us more about funding health. Ms. Wabwire, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
We're happy to have you with us. Now, if you can briefly just tell us a little bit about how the conference went down and what are some of the issues that stood out.
Thank you. The conference actually sought to take a look at what we've achieved, taking a look at what the Millennium Development Goals set out to achieve over the 15 years of their existence, but then also just looking at where we are, the progress we've made, but also the challenges ahead. And it was very clear that while we've made progress, that's it paints a very uneven picture on what that progress. What was most striking is the need to do things differently. No surprise, a lot has been achieved, but we also recognize that a lot of people are being left behind.
Yeah. Now, we know that for any of those goals to be achieved, there has to be funding. Most of the African countries have weak economies. They're not able to really set up budgets that can finance health. And they rely on countries like the United States. And not, I think just this week, the White House released its budget. And there were issues immediately because people thought, perhaps it doesn't really set enough funding for this kind of programs abroad. So is this kind of the normal we can expect in Washington, bickering over the budget?
Absolutely. In fact, as we were deliberating on where we need to go as a global community to addressing health challenges, we were also mindful of what was happening back here in Washington. And as you rightly say, just this Monday, the president released the fiscal year 20 budget request, which kind of paints a picture on what the next fiscal year would spend on the international affairs budget. And it essentially slashes that international affairs budget by 24% compared to the fiscal year 19 levels. So that's of great concern, given that the international affairs budget, one, is an important component of U.S. foreign policy. It funds much of the development and diplomacy initiatives, including global health.
But somebody may say, what is the justification to set money aside for, supporting programs abroad when there are issues right here in the United States that need fixing?
It's a fair question, but I think it's necessary to first correct a widely held misconception. A lot of Americans believe that the government spends way too much as 25% of the budget on foreign assistance, which is not inaccurate in any way. In fact, it's 1% of the federal budget that goes to foreign assistance and funds just about every initiative on diplomacy, funds every embassy overseas, funds global health initiatives, provides life-saving initiatives and treatment on HIV, for example, and many others.
Yeah. Now, some have actually in Washington said that they need to hold, say, African countries accountable, that there should be more shared responsibility in addressing some of these issues, not just relying on the United States. Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense, and so much of that is already happening. We see, and I think the conversation that's about to kick off with Congress is that while Congress is not obligated, by the way, to fulfill any of the requests included in the proposal, it's also going to set the tone for how the U.S. government engages with countries. And there are several mechanisms that are already demonstrating that. I'll just give an example. Last time I was here, we talked about PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. And PEPFAR has been very successful over the years because of its engagement with the countries that it operates. It's also been boosted by the long-standing bipartisanship and commitment to results. So I think this is an important opportunity for the Trump administration to continue that legacy. President Obama built onto what President Bush initiated. I think he has an opportunity for the Trump administration to accelerate that progress rather than cut.
We'll be on the lookout and see if there'll be some progress, and we'll call you back to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you,
Vincent.
Great to be here.
Well, that's Faustino Buer, who is a Senior Manager, Policy and Advocacy, Management Sciences for Health. Well, Somalis and other East Africans have made Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, a destination after fleeing their home and sometimes after leaving the United States. In the series finale of Taking Flight, VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young visited Winnipeg to meet the Somali community there and learn why this city has become their new home.
Almost 700,000 people live in Winnipeg, a growing number of them from East Africa, including Somalia. This is one gathering place for Somalis, the Genuine Restaurant. It's not just for the food, it's where newcomers become part of the community. Laban Shihadi paid a truck driver $1,500 to slip him into Winnipeg from the United States about 10 years ago. Since then, he has been working on becoming a Canadian citizen.
When I get to Winnipeg, I went to the immigration, the Forbes office. Then when I filed my applications, first I get denied, but they give me a work permit and they say it's like same like United States, like temporary protected. They give me something called pre-removal risk. So nobody can deport you back to your country until your country is going to be settled.
Shihadi gained permanent resident status in Canada and then brought his wife and daughter here from the United States. The Canadian of Somali ancestry says Winnipeg offers immigrants camaraderie and support. Abdi Salam Assad.
We have community centers that they can go to, such as Bilal Masjid in the northern area here. We have the Waverly Masjid, and also streets like this, like Sargent, where you can go up and down the street and everyone is warm, everyone is comfortable, and it's a lot better of a vibe, if I can use that word, for the people that do come in. Because it's not a tough city at all. We're Canadians by nature, so we're naturally polite, we're naturally kind-hearted people. So really, we try and help them as much as we can.
At the Winnipeg Islamic Center, Imam Mughadin Sheikh Omar says that the mosque also helps settle newcomers.
These people, most of them, are experiencing in the beginning a high level of stress. So it is for their mental well-being and of social health, it's so good for them to get that connection, to feel sense of security, and that opens the doors of many opportunities for them. For instance, housing. They may get some friends who help them live with them, or rent with another friend. And job opportunities.
From a troubled homeland, Somalis and others have found a new life and a sense of belonging in this city in the middle of the Canadian Plains. And as immigration problems cause more to leave the United States and other places, Winnipeg's immigrant diaspora grows. Jeffrey Young, VOA News, Washington.
Well, be sure to visit Africa 54's Facebook page to learn more about the series, this three-part series, rather, shortly after Africa 54 ends. Today's segment will be also posted on YouTube. Well, here in Washington, it has been a big week for African movies with the American Film Institute's 15th New African Film Festival. 37 movies from 22 countries, including 8 U.S. premieres. View Africa's Azuma Compaore and Ekia Badu attended opening night of the festival.
Well, this is the 15th annual New African Film Festival. Since 2004, we've been trying to bring to the D.C. metropolitan area, and hopefully beyond, a little slice of African filmmaking, the culture, society, the issues the broad issues that are in the society. And we hope that by having this festival, we give also people, especially the filmmakers, a chance to expose their latest works.
Opening with The Burial of Kodjo, the award-winning feature is writer and director Samuel Bazawule's directorial debut. Inspired by his grandmother's story, the movie is a dynamic gaze of magical realism and Afrofuturism set in Ghana.
I mean, as a filmmaker, you know, my stories come from, you know, sitting around by the fireside at night, nocturnal, listening to what my grandmother was telling us. And her stories were always magical. Her stories were always very imaginative. And so making a film like The Burial of Kodjo, it's a great opportunity for me to bring her ideas to life, you know?
For some of the Washingtonians who attended the screening, the movie is exactly what they hoped for.
On a global platform, it's important that this film is shown because, you know, a lot of times we are, you know, in the background, or we're the sidekick. We're not the main characters. And he used our customs, you know, our language. He praised us in so many ways through this film.
It's bringing that authentic Ghanaian way of living. So you see it in the movie as, you know, a real Ghanaian. For me, I could relate to it because that is my home. But then also showing it to the world as we live, for me, is good because I feel that is what is missing in our movies.
This year's festival is their largest and biggest edition so far.
This year we have 37 films from 22 countries, and 16 of the films are female-directed. So that's a huge move forward. And so we are hoping to continue in this realm. This way, moving forward, we'll having the most representation of all kinds of people.
The festival showcases African filmmaking and offers the chance to see films from all over the African continent that filmgoers wouldn't be able to see on the big screen.
We have so much richness in terms of our storytelling, in terms of our identity, our culture, our colors. These are things that make us who we are. And for me, this was a great opportunity to show the multiple layers of Africanness, of Ghanaianness, and also be specific about how you know, we feel about each other, you know, outside of what the Western gaze may be or the outside gaze may be.
Well, viewers, Azuma Compaore joins me now to talk more about the festival. Azuma, welcome to Africa 54.
Hi.
Now, it's obvious that African films are now being noticed globally. Who do we give credit for this?
I think it's more because a lot of the productions are getting very, very good quality, production-wise, but also because a lot of the filmmakers are actually taking ownership of the way they want to say or tell stories. The director of the burial of Kojo Hope and the festival was saying something that really touched me. He's very keen into finding or reinventing a way to make movies of cinematographic language that is very close to how we as African we see things. Like the way we speak, the way we think is very different when you do it in language, like in your own language, your mother tongue, or when you do it in English. So I think it's something that is becoming more and more like a trend, and a lot of the filmmakers are using that opportunity to affirm themselves and to make something that is standing out.
In very few seconds. So these are movies that can be watched both in Africa, but also by people who are based here, who produce right here.
Absolutely, and bringing it to the national capital is good. Just one last thing. this movie is actually debuting on Netflix as well, because it's part of the Air Raid program that Ava DuVernay started. So I think it's going to get a big you know, exposure with that.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Well, that's Azuma Compaore of the Voice of America. And we want to leave you now with The Good Time, a music video just released by Justo, whose real name is Justin Bradford, an American who first went to Kenya as a missionary and then fell in love with the country and the Swahili language. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night and a great weekend.
Stop wasting your time. Stop wasting your good time, because that is where you go wrong. Good time. Stop wasting your good time. Good time. Because that is where you go wrong.
Ati umesema tunadunda. Ati una dance rumba rumba. When your waist, it's a good time, yeah. And you're looking for a good sign, yeah. Tonight we are dundaing. All the pretty ladies are kujaing. Feeling so high, we are flying. Everything on me, I am buying. Say, yeah, you fine. And you looking so good, it's a crime. Say, yeah, good time. And I think I need to make you mine. Usiende kwa sababu unajua tuko hapa. And you know it's a good time. Ambao tunachapa odi dance to the beat. Shaku shaku with the feet. It's a good time. Kila mutu dance with me. Hey.
Good time. Stop wasting good time. Good time. Because that is where you go wrong. Good time. Stop wasting good time. Good time. Because that is where you go wrong.
Ati umesema twende Uber. Ati umepata buda buda. And you know utakuja kuja. Sawa basi ungeita Uber. It's a good time with me. Tujibambe kama fantasy.